Introduction. Why money has nothing to do with intelligence. Money looks like a subject of numbers, formulas, and logic. But in real life, money is driven by human behavior. Two people with the same salary can end up completely different financially. One may live stress-free with savings, while the other struggles despite earning well. Why? Because money decisions are shaped by childhood experiences, fear and greed, ego and comparison, past losses and wins. We don't learn money in classrooms, we learn it from life. This book is not about how to get rich quickly. It explains how people actually behave with money, and why understanding behavior matters more than intelligence. Chapter 1. No one is crazy. When it comes to money, people often judge others very quickly. We see someone spending too much and call them irresponsible. We see someone avoiding investment and call them fearful. But the truth is simple. No one is crazy with money. Every financial decision a person makes is deeply influenced by their own life experiences. What feels risky to one person may feel completely safe to another. What looks foolish to you may feel logical to someone else. Imagine two people. One grew up in a family that lost everything during a financial crisis. The other grew up during a time of economic growth, where money always seemed easy to earn. Now give both of them the same investment opportunity. The first person will hesitate. They will think about loss, instability, and fear. The second person may invest confidently, believing that things will work out. Are either of them wrong? No, they are simply responding to the world they experienced. This is why money behavior is more about personal history than education or intelligence. Most people never learn finance formally. They learn it through parents, surroundings, news, and emotional moments tied to money. Someone who saw their parents struggle may value saving over spending. Someone who never faced financial stress may take bigger risks. Someone who experienced sudden wealth may underestimate danger. Each person believes their view of money is normal. The problem starts when we assume our experience is universal. We forget that different generations, cultures, and economic environments shape different beliefs. For example, people who lived through high inflation often fear spending money and prefer tangible assets. People who lived in stable economies trust systems and long-term investments. Both approaches make sense from their point of view. This chapter teaches an important lesson. Context matters more than logic. When we understand this, we stop judging and start learning. We also become better at managing our own money because we recognize our biases. Ask yourself, why do I fear certain financial decisions? Why do I feel comfortable with others? Which experiences shaped these feelings? Once you identify the emotional roots of your money behavior, you gain control over it. You stop reacting blindly and start choosing consciously. Another powerful idea here is that people often argue about money strategies as if there is one correct answer. In reality, the best strategy depends on your personal history, goals, and emotional tolerance. A strategy that causes you stress is not a good strategy, even if it looks perfect on paper. Understanding that no one is crazy with money creates empathy. It helps you accept that financial decisions are not just numbers on a spreadsheet, but reflections of human life. And when you stop judging others, you also stop judging yourself. You realize that mistakes are part of learning, not proof of failure. The core lesson of this chapter is simple but deep. People don't make bad money decisions because they are stupid. They make them because their experiences taught them something different. Once you understand this, you don't just become better with money, you become wiser with people. Chapter 2: Luck and Risk. When we see someone successful, we usually assume one thing: they are talented, they are smart, they made all the right decisions. And when we see someone fail, we assume the opposite: they were careless, they didn't work hard, they made bad choices. But real life is never that simple. This chapter explains one uncomfortable truth about money and success. Luck and risk play a much bigger role than we like to admit. We love clean stories, stories where success comes from intelligence and failure comes from stupidity. But the real world is messy. Outcomes are influenced by timing, chance, and events that nobody can control. Think about two people who make similar decisions. One invests just before a market boom. The other invests just before a crash. Same decision, same intelligence, completely different results. Was one smarter than the other? No, one was luckier. Luck is invisible. Risk is invisible too until something goes wrong. This is why copying successful people blindly is dangerous. When we copy someone, we often copy their actions, but not the circumstances that help them succeed. Many famous investors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders succeeded not only because of skill, but also because they were in the right place at the right time. They survived long enough for luck to work in their favor. At the same time, many hard-working and intelligent people failed due to events they could not control: economic crashes, policy changes, health issues, or bad timing. The problem is that history remembers winners and forgets losers. We study success stories and assume they represent the full picture. But for every visible success, there are countless invisible failures. This chapter teaches us to be humble about success and gentle when judging failure. Success does not mean someone made perfect decisions. Failure does not mean someone made stupid decisions. Both success and failure are often influenced by risk exposure. Risk is the chance that something bad happens, even if you do everything right. Luck is the chance that something good happens, even if you take big risks. Understanding this changes how we think about money. Instead of asking, "How can I be right all the time?" a better question is, "How can I survive when I am wrong?" Because no one avoids risk forever. The smartest financial strategies focus on staying in the game long enough for luck to work. They avoid decisions that can permanently destroy you. This is why diversification, emergency funds, and patience matter so much. They reduce the impact of bad luck. Another powerful idea in this chapter is empathy. When you accept the role of luck and risk, you stop glorifying winners and blaming losers. You realize that outcomes are not always fair, and that's okay. This mindset protects you from arrogance when you succeed and from despair when things go wrong. It also helps you build realistic expectations. You stop chasing extreme success stories and start focusing on steady, sustainable progress. The goal is not to eliminate risk. That's impossible. The goal is to manage risk so that one bad event doesn't end everything. The core lesson of this chapter is simple but life-changing. You can do everything right and still fail. You can make mistakes and still succeed. What matters most is humility, patience, and survival. When you respect luck and risk, you don't become fearful, you become prepared. And in the long run, preparation beats prediction. Chapter 3. Never Enough. One of the most dangerous financial habits is not poverty, lack of education, or bad luck. It is the belief that more is never enough. This chapter explains how the desire for just a little more has destroyed fortunes, peace of mind, and even lives. And the scary part is, this mindset can affect anyone, regardless of how much money they already have. Human desires are flexible. As income increases, expectations rise. As wealth grows, comparison grows faster. A person who once dreamed of financial security may later crave luxury. Someone who achieved luxury may then chase status. And someone with status may want power or recognition. The problem is not ambition. The problem is never defining what enough means. History is full of people who had more money than they could ever spend, yet lost everything because they kept pushing boundaries. They were not poor, they were not unlucky, they simply refused to stop. Why does this happen? Because money is rarely about comfort alone. It becomes about comparison. We don't just want to be rich, we want to be richer than someone else. And comparison has no finish line. There will always be someone earning more, owning more, or showing more. This chapter teaches a hard truth. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. When people fail to define enough, they take unnecessary risks. They invest aggressively even when they don't need to. They chase higher returns at the cost of stability. They trade peace for pride. And often, they don't realize what they're risking until it's gone. Another powerful idea in this chapter is that wealth is not only about accumulation, it's about protection. When you have enough, the smartest move is often to preserve, not to multiply. But modern culture rewards visibility, not stability. We celebrate those who take bold risks. We ignore those who quietly stay safe. This creates pressure. Even people who are financially secure feel insecure because they compare their behind-the-scenes reality with someone else's public success. The result? More risk, more stress, less satisfaction. This chapter encourages a mindset shift. Instead of asking, "How much more can I make?" ask, "What would be enough for me to live peacefully?" Enough doesn't mean quitting ambition. It means knowing when ambition stops serving you. Defining enough acts like a safety fence. It protects you from decisions driven by ego, fear, or comparison. It allows you to enjoy what you've built, instead of constantly worrying about losing position. This idea also connects deeply with happiness. Many people believe happiness comes after reaching the next financial milestone. But if the milestone keeps moving, happiness is always postponed. Enough is not a number everyone agrees on. It's personal. It depends on your values, lifestyle, and emotional needs. And that's the point. When you define enough for yourself, you stop chasing someone else's life. The core lesson of this chapter is simple but powerful. The only way to win the money game is to stop playing unnecessary rounds. More money does not guarantee more peace, but knowing what is enough often does. Wealth without contentment is fragile. Wealth with clarity is freedom. Chapter 4. Confounding Compounding. Compounding is often called the most powerful force in finance. But the real challenge is not understanding compounding. It is believing in it long enough to let it work. This chapter explains why compounding feels confusing, slow, and even disappointing in the beginning, yet becomes incredibly powerful over time. Most people fail to benefit from compounding, not because it doesn't work, but because they don't give it time. At its core, compounding means that growth builds on previous growth. Money earns returns, and those returns earn returns of their own.
Over long periods, this creates exponential results. But here's the problem. Compounding doesn't look impressive for a very long time. In the early years, progress feels tiny. Gains are slow and boring. This makes people impatient. They expect visible results quickly and assume something is wrong when growth looks flat. The human brain is not wired to think in exponential curves. We think linearly. We expect steady, predictable progress. But compounding doesn't behave that way. It starts slow, then suddenly accelerates. This gap between expectation and reality causes confusion. People quit too early. They change strategies. They chase faster results. And by doing that, they interrupt the very process that could have made them wealthy. A powerful example shared in this chapter is how two people can invest the same amount of money but end up with drastically different results simply because one started earlier or stayed invested longer. Time matters more than effort. Consistency matters more than intensity. Someone who invests modestly for 40 years can outperform someone who invests aggressively for 20 years, not because they were smarter, but because compounding had more time to do its work. Another key lesson is that compounding rewards patience and punishes interruption. When people panic during market downturns and pull their money out, they break the compounding chain. Missing even a few of the best growth periods can reduce long-term returns drastically. Ironically, the moments when compounding is most powerful are often the moments when people feel most uncomfortable, during volatility, uncertainty, and fear. The chapter also explains why stories of overnight success are misleading. They hide the years of slow, invisible progress that came before the big breakthrough. In reality, most financial success looks unimpressive for a long time. Then suddenly, it looks extraordinary. But by the time it looks extraordinary, the work was already done years ago. This idea applies beyond money. Skills, relationships, reputation, and health also compound. Small habits repeated consistently over time create massive results. The danger is that people underestimate the long-term impact of small decisions. Skipping investments, delaying savings, or frequently switching strategies may feel harmless in the moment, but over decades, the cost is enormous. The chapter encourages readers to respect time as the most valuable financial asset. You can earn more money later, but you can never buy back lost time. Compounding doesn't need brilliance, it needs endurance. The biggest enemy of compounding is not market crashes, it is impatience, the urge to do something, to change course, to chase faster outcomes. Those who succeed are often not the smartest or the boldest. They are simply the ones who stayed invested, stayed calm, and stayed consistent while others gave up. The core message of this chapter: good investing is less about making great decisions and more about avoiding bad ones for a long time. Compounding works best when you stop interfering with it. Slow growth is not failure. Boring progress is not weakness. Time is the multiplier. If you can stay patient, compounding will do the rest. Chapter 5: Getting Wealthy versus Staying Wealthy. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two very different skills. Most people focus heavily on the first and completely ignore the second. This chapter explains a powerful truth. It often takes more discipline to keep money than to make it. Getting wealthy usually requires optimism, risk-taking, and confidence. You invest, you start businesses, you take chances, you believe things will work out. Without this mindset, growth rarely happens. But staying wealthy requires the opposite traits. It requires caution, humility, and fear, specifically fear of losing what you already have. Many people who build wealth fail to keep it because they don't make this mindset switch. The skills that help them grow money become the same skills that later destroy it. Risk is rewarded when you're trying to grow. Risk is dangerous when you're trying to protect. This chapter introduces an important idea. Survival matters more than growth. If you can survive long enough, opportunities will always come again. But if you lose everything once, it may take a lifetime or never to recover. History shows that most great fortunes were not lost because of one bad decision, but because of a series of unnecessary risks taken after success was already achieved. People confuse confidence with invincibility. They assume that because they were right before, they will always be right. This leads to leverage, overexposure, and fragile financial positions. Staying wealthy means preparing for things that can go wrong, even if they probably won't. This includes keeping cash reserves, avoiding extreme leverage, diversifying instead of chasing maximum returns. These decisions don't look impressive, they don't make headlines, but they quietly protect wealth. Another major lesson in this chapter is the role of luck and risk. Getting rich often includes a lot of luck, right timing, right market, right opportunity. But people rarely admit this. They credit skill alone and underestimate how easily things could have gone differently. Those who acknowledge luck tend to stay wealthy. Those who believe success was guaranteed tend to push their limits. The chapter also talks about the idea of margin of safety, having enough room for error so that mistakes don't wipe you out. This margin gives you flexibility. It allows you to survive recessions, mistakes, health issues, and unexpected life events without financial collapse. Staying wealthy is not about maximizing returns, it's about minimizing regret. Another powerful insight is that the purpose of wealth is not to impress others, it's to give you control over your time, choices, and peace of mind. When people forget this, they start taking risks to maintain an image rather than protect freedom. The chapter encourages a shift from growth obsession to longevity thinking. Ask not, how can I make the most money, but how can I make sure I never have to start from zero again? This mindset leads to slower but more durable success. It values resilience over speed, stability over excitement, enough over more. The core message of this chapter: you don't need to be perfect, you just need to avoid ruin. Wealth that survives is wealth that matters. Getting wealthy is exciting, staying wealthy is wise, and wisdom, in the long run, always wins. Chapter 6. Tails You Win. Most people misunderstand how success really works. They assume outcomes are evenly distributed, that effort leads to proportional results. But in reality, success often follows a power law distribution, where a small number of events create the majority of results. This chapter explains a critical idea. A few extreme outcomes matter far more than countless average ones. In investing, business, and life, most gains come from a small percentage of decisions. A handful of winning investments can outperform dozens of average or losing ones. These rare, high-impact outcomes are called tail events. The challenge is that tails are unpredictable. You don't know in advance which decision will be average and which will be extraordinary. This makes people uncomfortable because humans crave certainty and patterns. As a result, many people avoid strategies that depend on rare big wins, even though those strategies often deliver the greatest long-term success. In the stock market, for example, the majority of stocks produce modest or even negative returns over time. But a small group of stocks generates enormous gains that lift the entire market. If you miss those few winners, overall performance collapses. This is why diversification matters. You don't diversify to avoid failure. You diversify to increase the chance of catching tails. Another powerful insight from this chapter is that failure is not only common, it is necessary. If you are chasing tail outcomes, most attempts will not work. That doesn't mean the strategy is broken. It means the strategy is functioning as expected. People often quit too early because they see repeated small losses and assume they are doing something wrong. But tail-based success requires endurance through long periods of disappointment. This idea applies beyond investing. Entrepreneurs may fail multiple times before one business succeeds massively. Content creators may post hundreds of videos before one goes viral. Writers may be rejected dozens of times before one book changes everything. The winners are not those who avoid failure, they are those who survive failure long enough to reach a tail outcome. The chapter also warns against judging strategies based on short-term results. A good strategy can look bad for years before it works. A bad strategy can look brilliant briefly before collapsing. This makes patience and emotional control essential. Another key lesson is that asymmetric bets are powerful. These are situations where the downside is limited, but the upside is huge. You risk small losses repeatedly for the chance of one massive gain. Over time, a single tail event can outweigh all prior losses combined. However, this only works if losses are survivable. If one failure wipes you out completely, you never get the chance to benefit from tails. That's why survival is the foundation of tail-based success. The chapter also challenges the idea that consistency always looks smooth. In reality, performance driven by tail outcomes often looks uneven, volatile, and frustrating. Long, flat periods are normal. Sudden spikes are rare, but decisive. This is uncomfortable for people who want constant validation, but tail-driven success rewards those who can tolerate boredom, doubt, and temporary underperformance. The core message of this chapter: you don't need to be right most of the time. You just need to be right big once in a while and survive until then. Success is not about avoiding losses entirely. It's about structuring life so that losses are manageable and wins are transformational. If you understand tails, you stop expecting linear progress, you stop quitting too early, and you stop underestimating how much one good decision can change everything. Tails look rare, but when they arrive, they redefine results.
Chapter 7: Freedom. People often think money is about buying things, cars, houses, gadgets, or luxury. But this chapter reveals a deeper truth. The greatest thing money can buy is freedom. Freedom is not about showing wealth. It is about controlling your time. Real wealth is the ability to decide when you wake up, how you spend your day, who you work with, when you say yes and when you say no. Most people trade time for money their entire lives, and while that may be necessary at first, the ultimate goal of money should be to reduce that dependency. This chapter explains that financial independence is not about never working again. It's about working because you want to, not because you are forced to. When money controls your time, stress increases. Decisions become fear-driven. You tolerate situations you dislike because you have no financial buffer. But when you have savings and financial flexibility, something powerful happens. You gain leverage over your own life. You can walk away from toxic jobs. You can take breaks without panic. You can choose peace over pressure. The chapter highlights that freedom is subtle. It doesn't look flashy. It doesn't attract attention, but it quietly shapes a happier life. Many people misunderstand freedom and chase visible symbols of success instead. They buy expensive things that increase monthly obligations,
Ironically, these purchases often reduce freedom, not increase it. A luxury lifestyle with high fixed costs traps people. They earn more, but need more. They feel successful, but feel stuck. True freedom comes from low dependency, not high income. Another key insight from this chapter is that freedom is psychological as much as financial. When you know you can survive without your next paycheck, your confidence changes. You negotiate better. You take smarter risks. You stop acting out of desperation. This is why savings are so powerful, not because of the interest they earn, but because of the control they give you. The chapter also touches on delayed gratification. People who prioritize freedom are willing to sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term independence. They value options more than appearances. Freedom-focused people often spend less than they earn, avoid lifestyle inflation, value time over status. This doesn't mean living a boring or restricted life. It means intentionally designing a life where money serves you, not the other way around. The chapter also explains why freedom feels rare. Modern society rewards consumption and comparison. It encourages people to display success rather than build security. As a result, many people look wealthy but feel trapped. Few look ordinary, but feel free. Freedom is personal. For some, it means retiring early. For others, it means flexible work, creative control, or simply peace of mind. There is no single formula. The common thread is this: freedom comes from reducing the gap between what you need and what you have. When that gap is small, life feels light. When that gap is large, stress grows. The core message of this chapter: money's highest purpose is giving you control over your time, not to impress others, not to chase endless growth, but to live life on your own terms. Freedom may not be visible, but once you experience it, nothing compares.
Chapter 8: The Man in the Car Paradox. When you see a luxury car on the road, something expensive, shiny, and eye-catching, what do you think? Most people admire the car. Some admire the lifestyle. Some feel impressed, jealous, or motivated. But very rarely do people think about the person's actual financial health. This is the man in the car paradox. The paradox is simple. When someone buys a luxury item to gain respect or admiration, the respect often goes to the item, not to the person who owns it. People say, "Wow, what a car," not, "Wow, that person must be financially secure." The buyer expects admiration for themselves, but the admiration is directed elsewhere. This chapter explains why spending money to look rich often fails to deliver the emotional reward people expect. Humans are social creatures. We care deeply about how others see us. Money becomes a tool to signal success, status, and competence. But signaling is tricky and often misleading. When you buy expensive things, you may feel important for a moment, but observers don't know how much debt you have, how much stress you carry, how fragile your finances might be. They only see the surface, and surface-level admiration is shallow and temporary. Another key idea in this chapter is that visible wealth is usually the opposite of actual wealth. True wealth is invisible. It's the money saved, invested, and left untouched. You cannot see emergency funds, retirement accounts, long-term investments. You only see spending. That's why society often misjudges who is truly wealthy. Many financially secure people look ordinary. Many financially stressed people look successful. The chapter challenges the belief that spending money earns respect.
In reality, respect usually comes from character, confidence, and competence, not consumption. Buying things to impress others puts you on a dangerous treadmill. Standards keep rising. What impressed people yesterday looks normal today. You must spend more to get the same reaction. This creates pressure and anxiety. The chapter also explains that people rarely judge you the way you think they do. Most people are too busy thinking about themselves. They may notice your car for a moment, but they won't think about you for long. So if the emotional payoff is small and temporary, what's the cost? The cost is lost freedom. Money spent on image cannot be spent on security. It increases obligations. It reduces flexibility. This is where the paradox becomes painful. Trying to look successful can actually make you less successful. The chapter encourages a mindset shift from impressing others to protecting yourself. Instead of asking, "What will people think if I buy this?" ask, "What will my future self think?" Your future self values peace more than applause. Another powerful insight is that confidence does not come from showing wealth, it comes from knowing you don't need to. When you stop trying to signal success, you gain emotional freedom. You make decisions for yourself, not for approval. The core message of this chapter: people admire the car, not the driver. And admiration is not worth financial insecurity. Real wealth whispers. Fake wealth shouts. The goal is not to look rich. The goal is to be financially safe, calm, and in control. When you understand this paradox, you stop chasing validation and start building something that actually lasts. Chapter 9. Wealth is what you don't see. Most people think wealth is something you can easily spot. Big houses, luxury cars, expensive clothes, dream vacations. But this chapter teaches a powerful and uncomfortable truth. Real wealth is invisible. What you see is spending. What you don't see is saving. And that difference changes everything. When someone buys a fancy car, we admire them. We think, they must be rich. But the car itself is proof of money that is gone, not money that is owned. Spending money does not make you wealthy. Keeping money does. True wealth is the money you didn't spend. It's the money quietly sitting in your bank account, investments, or emergency fund. And because you can't see it, people often underestimate its power. Here's the irony. People who look rich are often struggling, and people who are actually wealthy often look ordinary. Why? Because real wealth doesn't need attention. This chapter explains that saving is a form of delayed gratification, and delayed gratification is one of the strongest financial skills anyone can have. When you choose not to spend today, you're buying freedom tomorrow. Freedom to say no, freedom to leave a bad job, freedom to handle emergencies without panic, freedom to take risks when opportunities come. That freedom doesn't show up on Instagram, but it quietly controls your life. Another important idea in this chapter is comparison. We often judge our financial success by comparing ourselves to others. But comparison is dangerous because we only see the part of their life they choose to show. You see someone's new phone, you don't see their credit card bill. You see someone's vacation, you don't see their lack of savings. You see spending, you don't see debt, stress, or financial pressure. When you compare your invisible savings to someone else's visible spending, you'll always feel behind, even when you're actually doing better. The author reminds us that wealth is not about looking rich. It's about having control over your time and choices. A person with a simple lifestyle but strong savings is far wealthier than someone earning more but spending everything, because one owns their future, the other rents it. This chapter also challenges the idea that money's purpose is to impress others. Trying to look wealthy often leads to the opposite result, financial insecurity. Spending to gain respect is a trap, because respect that depends on spending disappears the moment the money stops. Real financial confidence is quiet. It doesn't need proof. It doesn't need validation. The most powerful money habit isn't earning more, it's needing less. When your happiness doesn't depend on showing success, you stop chasing things that don't matter. And when you stop chasing, you start building. In the end, Chapter 9 teaches one clear lesson. Wealth is the ability to sleep peacefully at night, and that comes from money you can't see, not money you show.
Chapter 10. Save money. Saving money sounds simple, but emotionally, it's one of the hardest things to do. Most people believe they should start saving after they earn more, after they get a better job, after their income increases, after life becomes easier. But this chapter explains a powerful truth. Saving is not about how much you earn, it's about how much you control your behavior. Some people earn a lot and still save nothing. Others earn modestly and slowly build wealth. The difference is not intelligence or luck, it's discipline. Saving money is the gap between what you earn and what you spend, and that gap is the foundation of financial stability. The author explains that saving should not be seen as a sacrifice. It's not about depriving yourself of happiness. It's about buying options. Every rupee or dollar you save gives you more control over your future. Saved money gives you time to think, time to choose, time to recover from mistakes. Without savings, every decision feels urgent. With savings, decisions become calm. One of the most important ideas in this chapter is that you don't need a specific reason to save. Many people say, "I'll save when I know what I'm saving for." But life is unpredictable. Emergencies don't send invitations. Opportunities don't wait. Saving without a clear goal may feel pointless until the moment you need it, and that moment always comes. The chapter also talks about humility in saving. Saving requires accepting that the future is uncertain, that things can go wrong, that we don't know everything. People who refuse to save often believe they'll always figure it out later, but confidence without backup is fragile. Savings act as a buffer between you and life's surprises. Another key lesson is about lifestyle inflation. When income increases, spending usually increases too. Bigger house, better car, more expenses. If spending rises at the same speed as income, savings never grow, and freedom never arrives. The author encourages keeping expenses flexible even when income grows, because flexibility is power. Saving also protects you from being forced into bad decisions. Without savings, you may stay in jobs you hate, relationships you've outgrown, situations that harm your mental peace, not because you want to, but because you have no financial choice. Money saved gives you the ability to walk away. This chapter makes one thing very clear. Saving money is not about reaching a number, it's about reducing dependency. The less you depend on others for survival, the more control you have over your life. In the end, Chapter 10 teaches us that saving is not weakness, it's quiet strength. It's choosing stability over appearance, freedom over pressure, peace over noise. And the earlier you start, the more powerful it becomes.
Chapter 11. Reasonable, greater than rational. People like to believe they are rational with money. They think every decision is logical, calculated, and smart. But the truth is simple. Money decisions are emotional, and that's okay. This chapter explains that being reasonable with money is far more important than being perfectly rational. A rational decision looks best on paper. A reasonable decision helps you sleep at night. For example, investing aggressively might be rational because it offers higher returns. But if that strategy causes constant stress and fear, you won't stick with it. And a plan you can't stick with is a bad plan. The author explains that financial success is not about choosing the best strategy. It's about choosing the strategy you can live with for decades. People quit investing not because the plan was wrong, but because it was emotionally unbearable. Being reasonable means accepting your limits, understanding your fears, designing a plan that matches your personality. Money works best when it supports your life, not when it turns your life into a math problem. The biggest financial mistakes often happen when people try to act smart instead of acting comfortable. In the end, the chapter teaches one strong lesson. A good financial plan is one you can stick to, even when life gets messy.
Chapter 12. Surprise. History is full of surprises. Markets crash, booms happen, wars start, technologies change everything. This chapter explains that most major financial events were unexpected. If the biggest events in history were surprises, then predicting the future with confidence is dangerous. People love forecasts, they want certainty, but the author reminds us the future is shaped by things we can't imagine today. Instead of trying to predict exact outcomes, smart money planning focuses on preparation. Preparation means saving enough, diversifying investments, avoiding extreme risks. The goal is not to be right about the future. The goal is to survive whatever future comes. Many people fail financially not because they were wrong, but because they weren't ready for surprises. This chapter teaches us to expect uncertainty and build flexibility into our plans, because surprises are not exceptions, they are the rule. Chapter 13. Room for Error. This chapter introduces one of the most powerful ideas in the entire book. Always leave room for error. Life never goes exactly as planned. Investments don't always perform as expected. Expenses appear suddenly. People who plan with no margin for mistakes break easily. Room for error means extra savings, lower debt, conservative assumptions. It's the space that allows you to survive bad luck. The author explains that many financial disasters happen not because people were reckless, but because they had no backup plan. Room for error gives you time to recover, mental peace, and better decision-making during stress. When there is no buffer, every problem becomes a crisis. Having a margin of safety may look inefficient, but it's actually smart. Because the goal of money is not to maximize returns, it's to avoid ruin. Survival always comes first. Chapter 14. You'll change. This chapter delivers a very human truth. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago, and you won't be the same person 10 years from now. Yet many financial decisions assume we will never change. Careers change, goals change, values change. What once felt exciting may later feel stressful. The author explains that long-term plans should allow flexibility because future you may want something different. Many people feel trapped by financial decisions made by their past self. That's why adaptability matters more than precision. Instead of locking yourself into rigid plans, build systems that allow change. Saving, flexibility, and low fixed costs give you freedom to evolve. The best financial plans don't try to predict who you'll become. They allow you to become whoever you want. Chapter 15. Nothing's free. Everything in life has a price, but not all prices are paid with money. This chapter teaches that every financial gain comes with a cost, and the problem is that many people don't realize what cost they're paying. In investing, the price of higher returns is volatility. Market ups and downs are not mistakes, they are the entry fee. People often say, "I want high returns without risk," but that doesn't exist. If you want growth, you must accept uncertainty. If you want freedom, you must accept discipline. If you want independence, you must accept responsibility. The mistake people make is thinking volatility is a fine or a punishment. In reality, it's the price of admission. Those who understand this stay calm during chaos. Those who don't panic and quit. The chapter's lesson is simple. Don't try to avoid the cost. Decide if it's worth paying.
Chapter 16. You and Me. This chapter explains why comparing yourself to others is one of the biggest financial traps. Everyone plays a different game. Different income, different background, different goals, different risks. When you compare your life to someone else's success, you forget one thing. You don't know their full story. You might copy someone's investment strategy without knowing their safety net, their time horizon, their stress tolerance. What works for them may destroy your peace. The author explains that financial decisions should be personal, not popular. You don't need to win someone else's game. You need to survive and win your own. The moment you stop comparing, you start building clarity. Chapter 17. The Seduction of Pessimism. Bad news spreads faster than good news. Crashes feel more powerful than progress. Fear sounds smarter than optimism. This chapter explains why pessimism is so attractive. Negative events happen suddenly and dramatically. Positive progress happens slowly and quietly. That's why people believe the world is always getting worse, even when long-term data shows improvement. In finance, pessimism often feels responsible. Optimism feels naive. But extreme pessimism can stop you from investing, growing, and taking opportunities. The key lesson: progress is boring but powerful. Don't let loud negativity distract you from quiet growth. Chapter 18. When You'll Believe Anything. Stories are more powerful than numbers. This chapter explains how people often believe emotional stories over facts. If a story sounds convincing, we accept it, even when data disagrees. This is dangerous in money. People chase trends because of exciting headlines. They panic because of scary head stories. The author warns that when emotions lead, logic follows blindly. Smart money decisions require slowing down, questioning stories, and asking, does this actually make sense? Not every popular idea is true. Not every confident voice is correct. This chapter teaches skepticism, not cynicism, but healthy doubt. Chapter 19. All Together Now. This chapter ties together all the lessons of the book. Money is not just numbers, it's behavior, it's psychology, it's emotion. Success with money doesn't require genius, it requires patience, humility, consistency, self-awareness. You don't need perfect timing, you need good habits. You don't need extreme risk, you need survival. When all the principles come together, money becomes a tool, not a source of stress. Chapter 20. Confessions. In the final chapter, the author shares personal beliefs and rules about money. Not rules that apply to everyone, but principles that worked for him.
This chapter reminds us that there is no single correct way to handle money. What matters most is knowing why you do what you do. Your strategy should match your personality, your values, your goals. The chapter ends the book with a calm truth. Financial success is personal. If you're at peace with your decisions, you're doing it right. Conclusion: the real lesson about money. The most powerful lesson from The Psychology of Money is simple but often ignored. Money is not just about numbers, it's about behavior. Intelligence, education, or income alone do not guarantee financial success. What truly matters is how you behave with money over long periods of time. Throughout this book, we learned that people make financial decisions based on their experiences, emotions, fears, and hopes. Two people can have the same income, same knowledge, and same opportunities, yet end up with completely different financial outcomes. The difference lies in patience, discipline, and emotional control. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that success comes from taking extreme risks or finding shortcuts. In reality, long-term wealth is built slowly through consistency. Saving regularly, investing for the long run, and avoiding unnecessary risks often outperform dramatic high-risk decisions. Compounding rewards those who can stay calm and consistent. Another key lesson is understanding uncertainty. The future is unpredictable, and no one, not experts, not investors, not economists, can forecast it perfectly. Accepting uncertainty helps you build flexibility into your financial life. Emergency funds, reasonable expectations, and adaptable plans protect you more than perfect predictions ever will. The book also teaches us to redefine what enough means. Endless comparison leads to dissatisfaction no matter how much money you earn. Knowing when you have enough gives you freedom, the freedom to make choices based on happiness, values, and peace of mind rather than pressure or ego. Luck and risk play a bigger role in success than most people admit. Acknowledging this builds humility and empathy. It reminds us not to judge others too harshly or credit ourselves too much. Focus on what you can control: your savings rate, your behavior, your mindset, and your patience. Ultimately, money should serve your life, not control it. Wealth is not about showing off, beating others, or winning a game. It's about security, independence, and the ability to live life on your own terms. The real psychology of money is learning to make decisions you can stick with, sleep peacefully at night, and feel proud of in the long run. When behavior aligns with values, money becomes a powerful tool, not a constant source of stress. That is the true wealth.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope this will help you develop good habits. For more such audio, follow Becoming Mindful.